What has gone wrong with Penn State's coaching search? We'll get into that in a bit. Want to thank today's video sponsor, Big Fork Brands. Get 20% off using our link, which is pinned below in the comments. And while you're there, hit that subscribe button. It's free, and it helps keep us free, helps us grow. Appreciate you joining us. Penn State had first opening. You remember, it's been eons since James Franklin was fired and went on his tour of, self-promotion on ESPN and whatnot. And I will say this, that I'm not a big fan of James Franklin, but I am aware of what he does well. And part of the scouting report, which is what I do for teams, I think he's a salesman, he's a recruiter, he's just not a great X's and O guy. And it's so dependent, so coordinator dependent and assistant coach dependent that it's very, very difficult to maintain that consistency of being able to take that next step. Now, that we're consistent in, beating teams that they should, but boy, in games where they were evenly matched, they really struggled. Look, there's no question that I thought the perfect candidate for them would be Curt Cignetti. That was eliminated very quickly, Curt deciding to stay at Indiana with a new deal. I get it. I mean, he's done a great job there. To me, I think Penn State is a really good job. I'm surprised he didn't listen to it a little bit more. Athletic Director Pat Kraft lobbied hard for Matt Rule. A lot of people are down on Matt Rule. They say, well, he hasn't won this or that. Nebraska's a different animal. You got a definite recruiting advantage at Penn State compared to Nebraska. And Nebraska doesn't have quite the NIL commitment. And not that Penn State is doing what Ohio State's doing either, but look, it made some sense there, but that didn't go very far with the upper administration. Now, there was a lot of pie in the sky hoping for Mike Elko. We mentioned it here, and I know a lot of the Penn State fans were offended, and I don't like, to offend people, but you need to understand the truth, not what you think you hear from the local media, and take that as gospel. Mike Elko was not interested in the job, despite the fact that he went to University of Pennsylvania. Kalen DeBoer's not been a real factor. I think people have thrown that out as maybe a landing spot if things didn't go well at Alabama. And, we'll see going forward how things are going to go for him there. But never since there was much there. I talked to him a lot about Bob Chesney. I think Bob Chesney made a lot of sense for him. Not a big enough name for them. Recently, it came out that Kalani Sitake, they were interested there. Well, his camp leaked that out to get him more money from BYU. That was, to me, not something that was going to work very well. Brent Key, I think, is somebody that I don't know that they worked hard enough, and he's got an extension at Georgia Tech. Clark Lee got an extension. They didn't really work him all that much. They were uninterested in Brian Hartline, who I think if you're going to look at a assistant who can really do a job as a recruiter and as a coach, I think Brian is that guy. Now, he's agreed to take the USF job. Clearly, it's not what Penn State wanted to do, or you certainly take Penn State over South Florida, but for him, that is a good move. Look, there's still good candidates out there. Matt Campbell, to me, makes a lot of sense. And I think he would listen, even though he's turned down other opportunities in the past. I really think, and I've really encouraged them to talk to Brian Daboll. I think Brian Daboll is an outstanding coach. The whole Giant situation is personnel-driven, and I think they fired the wrong guy there. Guy can coach, and the guy's developed quarterbacks well. I mean, Josh Allen is ultra-talented. But, boy, mechanically, he cleaned him up and got him playing very well, and I think he's as good a quarterback as there is in football. It's a little bit frustrating to watch this search because they don't seem to be in unison of kind of what they want and who they feel can fit that role. You got some that has this idea that they're up here in that everybody's interested, which is not the case, and some others that maybe see some good fits and they're not big enough names, and it's just not really a good situation. They've lost this recruiting class. They've got only 6 commitments with signing day today. You don't want to rush a hire, but when you're not on the same page, it causes a lot of indecision, and it scares off some candidates. They should have secured a really good candidate by now, and they haven't done a very good job. I think it's an outstanding job, but not one that everyone's going to leap and say, I got to have it. I think it's really good, though. A little surprised that they didn't go very far with Pat Fitzgerald, who took the job at Michigan State. And look, I think there's some questions about Pat, but I think would be a really good fit, would have been a good fit. Again, he's at Michigan State. We talked about Chesney, who's apparently headed to UCLA. Will they take a harder look at Brian? I'm hoping that they do. Al Golden is another Penn State guy who's he was in the mix when Franklin was hired in 2014. He's obviously in the NFL as the defense coordinator for the Bengals. Terry Smith, longtime Franklin assistant, former Joe Paterno player. I thought did a really good job, made a case for keeping the job, leading the team to 3 straight victories. But, you get the feeling that if they end up having to go there, it's because they've not been able to figure some things out and come to a consensus. Look, it's got to be concerning, at least it is to me. Josh Heupel's name was floated out there as a potential mystery candidate. Man, he couldn't debunk that fast enough. I mean, he just came out and like, heck no, I'm not interested in that. And I understand it. I don't think he meant it as an affront to Penn State, but no. And I mean, you leave Tennessee to go to Penn State? I don't think so. Look, one of the things about searches, and I think sometimes, I know fans and media miss this a bunch, but even some administrators kind of misevaluate where they are. They think they're at a certain level, that they can attract certain guys, and then when it doesn't work out, then they miss some, I think, that really good guys that were more realistic, and I think that's where they are. Look, they may pull a rabbit out of the hat. They may get a guy that is, someone in the NFL who they can hire now. In case of Dayball, that they can hire now, but maybe somebody at this point that they want to wait in the NFL that's shown interest. It's just, it better be a slam dunk, because to take this long to not go through, I think some of those names that I mentioned would have really had legitimate interest. And I know they talked to a bunch of them. Something's going wrong there when either they're not showing enough interest in them, or based upon what they are selling to the candidate, that's not being perceived very well. So I think they really need to look hard at what they're doing. I can tell you that I know Pat, I know some folks in the Penn State booster and higher educational, because I've done some work with them before, and I'm a little bit surprised that they're at this point where they're struggling as much as they are. So I'm hopeful that they can get it figured out, because I think this is a job with a lot of pride and a lot of history. We know what's happened, in recent years. And, at this point, it's making it look like, James Franklin wasn't as bad as he was, and he was. They weren't going to that next level with James Franklin. I thought when they made that move, they had a really good idea who you could get. And that's the thing I would like to end this on is when I talk with people about coaching searches, in a case like this with Penn State, where they I think they acted pretty quickly with James Franklin, but you got to know who you can get. And how do you know that? I'm not saying you got to lock up a deal, but you know who's interested. And to go this long, they have missed the boat somewhere on identifying guys that would be interested or selling the program to those that were interested that have since backed out and used it to get better deals at their place. So here's hoping that they get it straight, but it has not been an impressive run. Hopefully that they will figure things out in the end, but it's not looking really good at this point. We'll keep you up to date on everything going on around this search and all the others, so keep it here. Appreciate you joining us. Hit that subscribe button, and want to thank our friends at Big Fork Brands. Big Fork Brands bring bold bacon sausage, paleo pork jerky, and a Chicago-style sauces to your table. Enjoy rich, smoky flavors made with sustainable ingredients and chef-crafted care. Use the link to receive 20% off any product. Great holiday gift, so take advantage of it. Good way to support us. The other way is to hit the subscribe button, share it with your friends. We appreciate you joining us. We'll talk to you again next time, everybody.